BCBA exam, as well as some of just like the exam construction, logistics, etc. And there are a lot of links within the PowerPoint. So I'll post the video, but also the PowerPoint itself, so you can actually access those independent links, because I'm not going to like click through all of them. Okay, so some initial stuff about the exam, and I did steal some of these slides from a presentation that was done by Global Autism Project as well, because I don't feel the need to retype slides. So you get 4 hours, 4 hours consecutively, no breaks. It is a completely computer-based exam. And the reason that I think it's important to know about this stuff is because as you're studying, it's really important that you recreate the exam conditions as much as possible. I think we're used to studying in short bursts when we can fit it in, and that's not really going to help you in terms of not only looking at your like content knowledge, but your test-taking abilities and endurance. So in terms of the breakdown, there are 150 questions of the BCBA exam, and this is the breakdown. So a lot of them are pretty equally distributed with our ethical considerations, definition and characteristics. Those are going to be like your purely rote definition things. Behavioral assessment, referring to both skill acquisition as well as functional assessment. And measurement, so data collection, methods, and graphical displays. So about the same number for all of those. There's less emphasis on experimental evaluation, which is going to really have you looking at data and determining things like, was this effective, was this not effective, what kind of design was used based on either the description or the graphs presented, that type of thing. And then the majority of the test, at least comparatively, is going to be on behavior change and systems support. So those like real-life client scenarios, there's a lot of vignettes. So if you take the exam during 2014, you'll have your exam lined up in terms of content areas and things like that with the 3rd edition task list. The 3rd edition task list is the one that's currently on the inside and backside cover of the Cooper, Kieran, and Buren 2nd edition text. And the 4th edition will be how your test content areas will line up if you take it from January 2015 on. Both of those task lists are available on the BACB website. And they're not grossly different. They're just kind of reorganized, and like the categories are changed. But that's actually kind of important, because if you're looking at the breakdown of the number of questions per category, if they say now put this topic in a different content area, that would then say increase the likelihood of you getting a question about that topic. Right? Yeah. If we're thinking about it like probability-wise. And the other reason why I think it's important to look at the breakdown and what's actually included in the task list is because you can target your study. So here, I'm not going to spend, if I have a limited amount of time, which we all do, I'm not going to spend a ton of time, say, completely rereading all of my stuff from research methods if I know I've got some deficits, especially in behavior change and systems support, that I really should be focusing on. So there is the ethical rule that's stated, and you'll sign something at the beginning of taking the test, that you cannot disseminate any of the exam material. And that means, recalling and disseminating specific questions or anything like that. So any examples that you see of questions that are available through some of the study aids that we'll talk about, any examples that I give, any examples that are available on mock exams, none of those, all of those have been independently created. None of those are based on actual past exams.
So it's something, if something happens to pop up on the exam that was similar, it's totally by chance. Okay.
Absolutely. I would hope.
Yeah.
Otherwise, there's a problem. The other thing, and I actually didn't know about this, but I found this out while I was researching this stuff, is that there are 10 pilot questions on the exam that, they go through piloting these to see how you guys do or what comments you write or something like that for when they create the next batch. Because everyone is taking kind of a different bag of questions,
Is there any way to spot those?
Not that I know of, and I would say try, I don't think the point is to spot them, but we will talk about how if something's really not making sense to you and just like you can't even do like process of elimination with the answers, it's move on anyway. Okay? So you get the exam results within 45 days of the examination date. Sometimes it's a little bit quicker, but it should always be about 45 days. And if you receive a pass, that's all you get. You just you don't get to know how well you did, which I think I would personally have loved to know, like, did I fly in colors pass, or was I on the border, you know? Right. That would give me some confidence or not about my repertoire. But if you don't pass, you do receive a percentage of correctly answered items.
Do they tell you which ones or not?
No. I think you just get the percent. I don't even think you get it broken down by, say, like content area, but I'm not 100% sure on that. Okay. Because this is different from what I said.
Yes.
The thing to notice about that, though, is that it can't be appealed. So if you are on the border and you think something's a foul, it is what it is. So don't perseverate. Right. That's better to keep studying. So the question, and this is what I think is most important to prepare you on, because you can have all the content knowledge in the world, but if you don't know how to approach these questions, that's going to be the problem. And the biggest thing that I hear from students who are stressing out about this is they're not a good test taker. And I think if we let one of our clients say something like that, we would say that's mentalistic. So prepare yourself as a test taker. Don't just prepare yourself with regard to the content knowledge. So the questions can be very lengthy, especially those that are vignette-based. And again, think about your history and how you typically respond on things like essay questions and writing prompts and stuff like that. Are you likely to read, get to the end, and then make, like a gut initial reaction and response just based on, say, the last quarter or third of the question, whatever you most previously read, right? Are you likely to start thinking about the answer early on in reading the question and maybe skim or skip over or not put as much emphasis on other details that are included later, and how is that biasing the answer you choose? Because you have to choose the best answer. There's going to be potentially multiple right answers. You have to choose the best answer. So that's where I think a lot of students get tripped up. So you get to use like a dry erase board for like taking notes and things like that, and use that to your advantage to really separate out, okay, what's important about this question and what is maybe just not important, or what are they actually asking? Because the other thing is, if you think about instructional design and how they determine on a multiple choice question if you really know what's right, your other multiple choice answers that are the wrong choices are going to be close in, non-examples, right? They are there to require you to demonstrate a fine discrimination, to demonstrate that you actually know what you're talking about. So, try also not to do the thing where some people work backwards and look at the answers and try to see what makes sense and what fits, which is, I think, almost something we've been taught to do with multiple choice questions. Totally. You're going to get to a different answer if you do it that way. So really use your dry erase board to kind of create outlines and unpack these questions, separate what's important, and most importantly, make sure you are actually answering the question that's being asked. There's a lot of things that you may start thinking about with regards to these questions and how they're written and where they may be going with it, and that's potentially not what they're doing. So take the time to actually thoroughly read the question. I was just working on an assignment this week, and I did that thing where you kind of skim over it, and you think you know what they're asking, and that's an answer that's available. And then someone was like, "How did you get that?" And I was like, "I skipped the second part of the question. That's how I got that." So you don't want to do that, because obviously, not only are you not going to get that feedback, but I think about how if you don't pass and you get that percentage of these are the number of questions you answered correctly or incorrectly, however they communicate it, without that specific feedback, I don't want you going back and questioning things that you did correctly and thinking those are incorrect when you take the test in the future, just because you're not getting the actual correct feedback. And that's a bummer. So really try not to overthink the question. Try not to, answer something that's not actually there. One of the things, and this came up when I took the test, is that it would be like, well, A is the answer if this is the case. B is the answer if this other thing is the case. And what you have to think about is all the information you need is in that question. So if you find yourself going down that road of, well, it could be this or that depending on blah, 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 blah is not even something you should be paying attention to. It shouldn't even be popping into your mind. And I think this is what you were talking about with, thinking about it from a practitioner standpoint or from the, from a practitioner standpoint, I may say, oh, well, if the data was taken accurately, then yes, that graph would mean that the intervention was done correctly. But if the data was taken inaccurately because this is a school setting and we have, say, a parent taking data who's likely to, record data inaccurately, then maybe it's not as effective or something like that. If you start adding stories and details to the question, you're going to get to a different answer. And with the vignettes, I think that's so important. So really remember, all the information I need to make the right decision is here. Don't add your own story. Okay. There is a comments area. And this has been, I think, a point of contention. Because a lot of people, I think, initially thought that the comments area was so you could justify your answer, or in these questions where it was like, if this is the context, then this would be the answer, right?
They were saying that's what they do.
It's not what the content area is for. No. The content area is only if you feel that there is something really wrong with the question and you want to provide, your input about that. They look at the content area. First of all, they don't even look at all the comments that people put. But if there's, say, a ton of comments for one given question, especially one given question that a bunch of people got wrong, they're going to look and see, okay, what's going on with the design of this question. They're not considered in your grade. For the most part, they're not even read. So you really have to think about, what is the purpose in me making a comment? Is it so I can feel better about justifying my answer and move on with, say, a little less anxiety, a little less distraction? Because it's taking your time, right? And I don't want to dissuade you. If you think there's something really wrong with the question, put a comment. But don't let it waste your time, and don't think that it's going to change your grade mentally.
So it's not a justification for your answer. It's
No.
not doing A would be the answer back
No.
because then you're putting in your own story again.
Right.
And so that's something.
Absolutely not. It is not considered in the grading. And I think that I don't want to say you used to use it for that purpose, but that's not how it's used now. And I got this information from a presentation done by Amanda Kelly, so yeah.
Yep.
Answer every question. So there's no weird grading with this is weighted, this if you don't put a, kind of like how the SAT works. There's no points available for blanks, so at least try,
Does that mean they just add up all the correct answers and that's how they come up with it? If you don't, how can you not be penalized?
Well, no, you're penalized if you don't get something right,
Okay.
But it's not like if you skip it, you get penalized less than if you guess wrong.
So it's just as much work. Yeah. Okay.
You can flag questions, though, and come back to them. And this is what I want you to really think about. If you read something and you look at the choices and you're just like, huh? Read it again, give it one more time, but really think about, okay, maybe this is one of those areas that I'm just not fluent in for whatever. Do I have the time to sit and work on this for 5-10 minutes? Or would those 5-10 minutes be better spent getting through all these other questions, since they're weighted equally, that I could be, wrapping up? Especially if you notice that you're running short on time. Really try to pace yourself as best as possible. And you can also use your whiteboard to do that, to kind of keep track of what your rate of responding looks like. Because, some people are great at that. Some people don't have as much practice pacing themselves. 4 hours is a long time to just be sitting and reading questions and kind of getting stuck up in your head. So those questions where you're really like, I can't even make an educated guess right now, flag them and come back to them. It's also the possibility that happens with tests like these that something you read in a question later on will be like, that's what they were talking about. I know, and you can go back to it, right?
You don't flag, can you go back?
You can go back, but I think it might be, like you can go forward and backwards. It's not like once you pass a question, you're done with it. But again, you want to think about conserving your time. I would say that you can comfortably go through everything once and then go through everything a second time and check it. So, use your flags for things that you can't answer or things that you're like, this is what I think it is, but I'm going to give it some time and come back to it, On that note, be very mindful of what may happen if you go through and you see your flags start adding up, if you're going to feel like, I don't know anything, and I have not made any progress in this test. And comparatively, like 50% of the questions are flagged, right? One of the things that they recommended in one of the tutorials that I've used was that you also use your dry erase board to give yourself pluses for all the ones that you know without a doubt that was right. So you can have some visual depiction of boosting your confidence. And I think that that's a really, really wise idea because you're already going to be stressed and anxious, and seeing a bunch of data to show that you maybe have a reason to be stressed and anxious because you're not certain on some questions, it's going to mess with your head and your ability to concentrate. So, with regards to the questions, the most important thing is that you are really answering the correct question and not answering, something else, and that you're not adding your story to it. And, I'll talk about some resources later where they have kind of examples in YouTube videos of a question and answers and how you could potentially get off track and get to the wrong answer. So, what to study? Like I said, it's coming from the task list, so regardless of what additional study aids you use the task list to guide especially how you're breaking down the proportion of time that you're spending on any given topic area. I think that's really important. Practice answering vignettes, because I feel like the longer the question is, the more easy it is for you to start getting confused, start answering a different question, take away the wrong points, etc.
Is this similar to the vignette you gave us in ABA 2? Is that like what a vignette will look like?
Yeah, probably slightly more detailed maybe.
Okay.
Okay? So, that's the other thing. When we're talking about practicing answering vignettes and SAFMED, this is a fluency-based test, right? Your times. If you're a slow reader or someone who tends to get off task easily while they're reading long things, like you stop halfway through and then you pick at your nails or something like that, you got to practice getting through these things more quickly, and that's what I'm talking about with regards to recreating the study conditions, the test conditions rather, when you're studying, so that those things aren't going to get in the way and cause you to fail when you actually do have the content knowledge. So if you go on the Cooper, Kieran, and Heward textbook website, and again, you can access the link when I actually post the PowerPoint, for each chapter, there's a ton of resources, including guided notes and outlines. But what I think is more beneficial is they have practice multiple choice questions and essay questions, and the answers are available there so you can actually check. They don't give rationales for the answers, but they give the answers. And there's a lot of vignettes in those, both multiple choice as well as essay questions, because if you're just making these all up in in your study group or something like that, it's going to take a really long time. The other thing is Miltenberger's Behavior Modification Principles and Procedures textbook has a ton of vignettes in it, and at the end of every chapter they have multiple practice quizzes and practice essay questions. And they also have this great section called Applications and Misapplications, where it takes you through a vignette and asks you if it was done, say, correctly or incorrectly and why. And so that textbook, I think, is a great resource for studying for this exam. And they don't have that stuff on the website, but I have a copy of the textbook in my office, and you can feel free to stop by and make photocopies. In ABA 1, we've read some of the chapters from that book, specifically on like chaining and extinction, I think, and stuff like that. So you may also already have PDFs of that. Okay. But the other thing is there's multiple editions of this book, so you could probably get some older editions, you know, on Amazon for like a couple bucks used, because no one's buying these textbooks anymore because there's a new edition out.
That doesn't mean information is wrong with an older edition.
Exactly. No. They just update stuff. Yeah. So, you know, depending on, you know, how much you want to invest in these materials, and I'll talk about that in a second, you know, it's definitely available. I would say any introductory ABA textbook that you can get your hands on, you're going to find vignettes in there. And, you know, don't reinvent the wheel. Because you also don't know if you're even designing, you know, if you're writing practice questions for yourself, you don't know if you're writing something that's going to be remotely useful. Right. You know? Right. Go back through your old class materials. So I know for ABA 1, we did a ton of stuff like this in terms of vignettes, both as part of the, you know, lecture, as well as things that I posted online and stuff like that. So, you know, try not to waste your time or your money unnecessarily. If you have access to all these materials, then maybe you don't need to spend money on these more expensive tutorials I'll talk about. And then staff meds. So staff meds and that quick fluid responding is really going to get you through this definitions and characteristics unit. That's what's going to, you know, those ones that are purely about, you know, this is a definition of this, or even, you know, they give you an example of, say, what maybe time, you know, they give you a vignette that involves timeout, and they ask you, you know, what is that an example of? So that's stuff that you want, you don't want to spend time mulling over. So that would
available to be in a multiple choice format.
It's all multiple choice.
Okay.
Absolutely. And like I said, with the definitions, you want to have that stuff super fluent because, remember, the non-examples, the wrong answers, are still going to be close in non-examples. So they may be changing just one word, right? You think about how we like to get tricky with multiple choice questions, and the not, or the A, you know, answer C is both A and B. Answer D is neither A nor B. You know, that type of stuff. You want to get really fluent in, you know, responding to those things correctly so that you're not also making kind of careless reading errors.
Can I ask you a question with regards to the vignette? So as a way to maybe study, if I'm in a study group and we read through it, one person in the study group actually has the actual answer. In the group, you discuss it, take notes on it, and the person who has the answer say, okay, this was the correct answer. Now let's talk about it based on what you guys said. I guess to become more fluent in it. Would you suggest something like that? Because that's the way I'm thinking of it.
That's a great question. I would actually not talk through it and before you check the answer. I would write through it yourself and then give the answer and then discuss why that answer makes sense and what you had that would support that. Because I feel like if you have that discussion justifying and rationalizing your answer, you're practicing a mistake potentially. And you don't want to reiterate that in your repertoire. However, we all have our justifications, right? If we were in a study group together. So we finish answering the question and I say, okay, this is the answer, right? And then we'll talk about why that's the correct answer. Then, if any of us had an incorrect answer, we'll talk about why it's actually incorrect to further create that distinction and discrimination. Don't practice error, you know? And I think that, you know, one of the things I talk about later is how you really do need to be studying this with someone else, if not for the contingency of getting a lot of studying in, because things, you know, it's not a real deadline, you know. You could take the exam without studying at all. But also, so you can work through some of that, you know, that thought process that you are contributing to making these answers. You know, that's something that you're missing out on not being in class anymore, walking through how you got to both the right answer as well as the wrong answer. Because trust me, when a multiple choice question is well designed, the wrong answers are wrong for a specific reason. You know, you made one wrong error with regards to this part of the question, and that's what got you to this answer. Or if it was another part of the question, that's what got you to that answer. And that's how you design really good multiple choice questions, so that you can't just get it right by chance or by deductive reasoning. You know? So there is a method. There's a method, and there's a reason why good multiple choice questions are tricky. So, how to study. Recreate the test conditions as much as possible. When you're going to be doing these like mock exams, right, whether you buy a mock exam package or you actually create one from a bunch of different study vignettes, you need to sit at a computer and do it for the entire duration, right? You need to sit for 4 hours and get used to what it feels like to sit for 4 hours and do this. Ideally, in the presence of someone else.
And there's no smoke breaks or nothing?
There's nothing. I think you can get up and go to the bathroom, but it's like a very rigorous process of like checking you in, checking you out. So you also want to, you know, save your time.
Right. Because that would also waste your time.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. Now, in the presence of someone else, so that A, you have that reactivity effect and someone's watching you, because other people will be in the room. But also, it's going to keep you there working for that full hour. You know, you're going to be less likely to give yourself a little leeway here and there when other people are there trying to do the same thing you are. Now, if this is something that's absolutely terrifying right now, start smaller and work your way up to that 4 full hours. You know, start by doing a 1 full hour of reading and answering questions, and then, you know, gradually get better at it. And notice when you're doing this, what are the things that are distracting you, that you do, you know, like you said, if you want to get up and go smoke, if you want to go to the bathroom. And think about, okay, I'm going to test myself, I'm going to practice testing myself in conditions when these are going to be present distractors to desensitize myself, you know? So while you may have a cigarette right before you go in to the test, right, you want to practice taking the test in some periods of deprivation so that doesn't just like consume you.
Can you have gum, do you know?
I believe, you know what, I don't know. Shannon was telling me that she brought cough drops in because she was sick when she took it, and they actually made her unwrap all of them and examine everything. So I would actually, that's going to be specific to the test center.
Okay.
You know, it's like Kaplan or something like that. Yeah. So wherever you're going to take it, understand all the rules before you go.
And you can call that center and ask them for the rules. Okay.
The other thing is, have someone else grade your mock exam, because that's, again, going to create a contingency for you to actually answer them all and not just, I don't know this, so I'm just going to skip over it, right? And also, again, so that it's not like, sometimes I feel like when we test ourselves, like, I'm just going to, you know, skip this or put this and I'll check it later and I'll learn this later, right? Really want to create that stress, recreate that stress as much as possible. Someone's going to be grading this and they're potentially going to, you know, think I'm either super smart or really dumb, and, you know, that's unfortunate, but this is going to be stressful. So recreate stress so that you can persevere and persist against it. You know, that's what fluency is. Keep track of your pace when you're taking your mock exams. So, you know, one easy way to keep track of inner response time is to note the time that you start each question, right? So you have a little, you know, clock with minutes and seconds next to you. As you move on to each question, you're noting the time that you start in the next one, right? Then you can figure out the time that you spent on each question. Why? Because those questions that you spent a lot of time on likely indicate that you're not as fluent in that area. You can match those up to the content areas and spend extra time studying on those. So as you progress in your studying, you shouldn't find that you're studying in the same way all the time. You know, you should start with studying as you test yourself, as you demonstrate mastery, right? almost like with, like a kid's, discrete trial program or something like that. Once they got this program down, I'm going to put that in maintenance. I'm not going to stop testing it altogether. But these other ones that they're still acquiring, that's what we're doing the math practice on every day. So, keep those other questions in the rotation, but focus on your deficits. Really create study groups so that you can unpack these questions together. You have someone there who has, the same EOs in place with regards to, yes, I know I need to practice, and me sitting with you for 4 hours is not a burden on my day. And, yes, I want you to grade this, and I'm going to grade this, so we have that same level of, commitment, and we're not creating any, undue burdens on anyone else in our social lives. There's nothing, I find that a lot of people work with their significant others or roommates or whatever, even if it's just like, oh, will you test me on these flashcards? We feel like we're putting them out by having them do this. Obviously, if you work with other students who are studying as well, you've all got the same contingencies, and if anything, you're there, to create a strong verbal community for one another. You're also there to constantly check each other. So when you're going over the test together, right, and you see that you got a wrong answer, why did you get that wrong answer? Did you overthink this question? Did you add a story to it? If you think about the single-out problem-solving stuff that, we talked about in the ABA 2, this is what it's for, So you can figure out where the fault is in your thought process. Or, because if you can't catch it, if you think that that's the right answer, you're just going to keep putting that as the right answer. Or you may get the right answer, but not know how to kind of work backwards from that and figure out where you messed up. And so this is where other people are going to be of benefit. Ideally, the group that you create all has something to learn from one another in regards to each of you having kind of a different strength with regard to the content area. That would be marvelous. If a bunch of you are really struggling with, say, the experimental evaluation piece, find someone who was a rock star in research methods. And pull them in, because I don't want you further confusing each other. And then when you're checking it, did you pick the best answer, right? Like I said, a lot of these may seem right, but was that the best answer? So, some study materials that are available. We already talked about all those ones that, kind of are freely available and you should have access to now. Do-it-yourself studying. There are some mock exams that are available. So Florida Institute of Technology has mock exams that are actually on the computer. It's not something you get and you keep and you have the questions. You take it right then and there, like that. Some feedback that I've seen related to individuals who have actually taken this. It does cost money. Obviously, all of these things on this slide cost money. You only get to take it once, and that's it. Once you start it, you go through the whole 4 hours. And you get one
sitting, so it's like really, okay.
Yep. And then you get feedback only related to the content area, not question by question. So that may or may not be something that you're interested in investing money on, especially if you feel like it's not the whole content area that you struggle with.
A little bit of feedback. I joined the Students for Applied Behavior Analysis group on Facebook, which seems to be a lot of the FIT students. I'm not sure if they're very happy with it right now, or if it's just the current setup. I don't know.
So, and this is not something that's necessarily just made available to the students. They sell this.
Okay.
And some of like I get like the posts on a lot of the stuff that's going on the LinkedIn discussion groups right now, as well as on like behavior-based Facebook page and stuff like that, ask, what can I be doing to study? From what I've seen thus far, the real concern with this was the price, given that you can only take it once, and that you don't get corrected feedback. On that same note, again, because the mock exam, we're thinking, like we want a lot of practice questions, right? So there is a mock exam that is available both printed as well as by download from Amazon, and it's by Mark Valley. I don't know if that's a person or a publisher. It's much more affordable, it's like $20 or something like that. But what I found in the comments and also in discussion on other boards was that there's no explanations for the correct answer. So again, if you're going to try to do this solo and not be able to work through some of this stuff, not having explanations for the correct answers is going to be a big problem. Why? Because if you get it wrong and you say, oh, that's the answer because of X, and your rationale for the right answer is wrong, then in the future, you're likely to misapply that rule to similar questions.
But if you get it wrong on the math exam, they do tell you why you're wrong?
No.
Oh, they don't tell
They
you
just tell you it's wrong.
Oh, there's no other descriptive feedback.
Yeah, you get the questions, and then you get the answers. There's no rationale why the correct answers are correct.
Got it. Okay.
Which again is, could create some issues if you're coming up with your own rationales and they're wrong, right? There are some tutorials and modules available. We know about the BDS modules, Behavior Development Solutions. One thing to know about this, so they are kind of expensive. They do have a money-back guarantee that if you do them and you complete them all to like 100%, and you don't pass, then you get your money back. So in that way, it could kind of seem like this is a good investment, and if I take it, I pass. I'm probably not going to care once I pass, about $300 or whatever. But if I don't pass, I can get that money back.
Right.
I have heard completely mixed results almost evenly regarding using them. So it is about the investment and whether or not you can make that. It's nice because they are timed and they do require you to go through them with proficiency. So you can't just kind of like lackadaisically study. It does create that sense of urgency.
Do you know if you start the module and you're only showing up at like 70%, you can keep redoing that module?
You can keep retaking them until you get 100.
Okay.
And they will not give you, from what I understand, the refund unless you actually completed them all to 100.
Okay.
Yeah. The other one that's available is on this website called PassTheBigABAexam.com. And they, I'm not sure about the price, but they similarly have both, guided tutorial and modules there. So all these ones on the left-hand side of the do-it-yourself are kind of self-paced, self-directed, not, like interactions with others. All the ones on the right are these tutoring sessions, scholar sessions, intensive reviews that are offered that are interactive. You have an instructor there, either remotely, through like a webinar or something like that, or some of them you can actually attend in person. So FIT also has a guided review and tutoring. One is, they have ones that range from like 2-day intensives to like 8-week sessions where you're essentially like taking a class almost. Global Autism Project also has review sessions and scholar sessions. So I know their scholar sessions are divided up over the course of a longer period of time. And again, we have to think about, okay, what type of learner am I? Is this something I want, like a quick review on, or is this something I want to spread out over time and have more assistance, right? Obviously, the longer ones and the more interaction that you get, the more expensive they're going to be. I would really recommend liking Global Autism Project on Facebook and subscribing to their emails, because they do a lot of even just like 1 or 3 hour tutorial sessions. And every time they offer one, I feel like they have a thing where it's like us now, or send your email now and you can get in for free.
Yeah, I've seen that.
So might as well. If you can get it for free, do it for free.
Do you know if Amanda Kelly's planning on doing anything more with them? Like, I know she held like a big review session.
Yeah, she is their newest scholar person. So she will be running some of these review sessions and scholar sessions. Okay. Mm-hmm. There's also, if you go to this link through the BCB.com, it will take you to a whole list of providers that they have. And it's not like they are endorsing these providers. They're just, CE providers, and they're authorized on their website that provide both group and individual tutoring. Some of these are provided through companies. Some of them are provided, just by individual BCBAs who want to do this. There's one called Orlando Behavioral Health, and actually a current supervisor of ours, Brooke Einhorn, it holds some of their study sessions for them locally. So if that's something that you want to do and you feel like you need that in-person interaction and you really don't even do well with like remote stuff, then that's something to look into. Again, what you really want to think about is where are you at, what type of learner are you, and what type of study method is going to benefit you both before you invest in this stuff. Because we're talking about like $300 and whatever to apply and sit for the exam. You can easily spend $1,000 just on some of these like tutorial sessions and these review sessions, let alone like if you're doing modules and stuff like that on top of it. So I would try the more economical means first and see if that's going to work. And then this shouldn't be a more is better. I'll sign up for all the review sessions. You really want to figure out what's going to work for you so you can use your time in the most efficient and effective way possible. Don't waste your time, say like viewing a PowerPoint online, if you know you can't attend to that. If you know you're going to be sitting there and clicking fast forward or getting up and leaving or flipping over to Facebook, don't even waste your time and your money, Think about your entire academic history thus far. What has really worked for you studying? Because this is a test, and we can't get away from that fact. And no amount of, humming and hawing and saying I'm not a good test taker, this or that, you can't get away from this. You want to be a BCBA, you got to take this test.
Do you have a recommendation for how long you should be studying?
I think that's a completely individual thing. I know some people who have passed it and not studied. I know some people who have passed it and studied for a year. I know some people who have studied for a year and didn't pass it. So what does studying mean?
Right.
You got to look at the outcomes. And that's why I think it's so important to constantly be doing mock exams, because you need to be testing yourself. And is this time spent reading and outlining and highlighting? Is that working? Is it worth your while? And also because it's not just about the content. It's about your test-taking skill, right? And you've got to practice that no matter how uncomfortable it is. So, to kind of finish up, the links on this page are some comprehensive tips that I found from various websites. So Behavior Development Solutions, they have their own whole PDF available to this link of different tips to prepare for the exam. Of course, they're going to recommend that you do the BDS modules. If you do the BDS modules, they also have on their tips for how to do them most effectively. I put the link up there to Behavior-Based website. She talks a lot about both free as well as pay per service for different things that are available with regards to studying, but also some of the things that we talked about tonight with regards to how to approach the questions. Same thing, I found this great website from this BCBA named Siri Ming. She also has tutoring sessions and things like that, but I thought her tips list was pretty great with regards to kind of putting things into context. And last but not least, Global Autism Project's YouTube page has a bunch of really great tutorials. So they have some hour-long ones that's like top 10 things to know going into the exam, top mistakes people make while taking the exam. They have a couple that specifically are called unpacking the question, and they'll give example questions and walk through how to pick apart, okay, what are they actually asking here, which I think is important if you kind of are having a hard time wrapping your head around what do we mean by dissecting the question. And those are nice, because they're all free and they're a little more interactive, and a lot of them are webinars. So at the end, they seem kind of long, but at the end, the last 20 minutes, half hour or so of these hour-long webinars that are posted are people asking live questions. So I think that's great. So you can hear some questions that other people may have that either you also have or that you didn't even think of, and they go over those. No one's going to be able to tell you specifically what to expect on the exam because we can't, and with that, just thinking about, okay, what is the purpose of this, right? And how am I framing that as I approach studying for the exam? This is not something to cram for. I wish, none of the tests that you took in your graduate career were something you crammed for. This is a test of your competency in something you are planning on doing as your profession for the foreseeable future. So to approach it capriciously, I think, is disrespectful to the field. It's disrespectful to the professional that you are saying you want to be. And be honest in evaluating your skill set. Are you really ready for this? Because if you're not, why invest the $300 to sit and take it now, right? And then think about, okay, if I don't pass it, how is that going to maybe deter me from starting to study and taking it right away again, right? Because I think, once you don't pass something, now you got all this other baggage, right? You're going into the test with, right? Being a BCBA, passing that test means that you are ready to practice somewhat independently, right? Now, there are people that have passed the test that I don't think should be practicing independently, right? There are people that haven't passed the test that I feel like are very competent practitioners. But you have to think about, okay, do I have this skill set and this content knowledge in my repertoire? And if I do, then okay, I'm in a good place in going into this. If I feel shaky, would you want to pass? Would you want that indication that, okay, I feel shaky, but this test told me I'm ready to do this? And think about the implications for your clients that kind of false sense of confidence can have. So be honest with yourself. There's no harm in taking some extra time to study, to take the test. And I know, okay, well, I'm not going to get this salary or this billable rate until I pass it, right? You're going to have a lot more baggage to deal with if you don't pass it in regards to, your reputation. People find that out, unfortunately. That's just something we can't avoid, that judgment issue. But also your self-confidence.
Of not passing it the first time, you're saying, or just not passing it, period?
Well, I mean, I would hope that at some point you pass it,
right.
But, some people, it takes a couple times. Some people I know are still trying, and they can't do that,
So if you're up to that, like if you don't pass the first time, there is a judgment, you think there's a judgment thing?
I think there's always a judgment when you don't pass something, whether it's
even
we're talking about the BCBA exam or not. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I'm just kidding. Yeah.
I mean, I'm not saying it's universal, but I'm saying you can't, and you want to be prepared for that. Especially if you are, say, getting a job with a bunch of people who did pass, right? Say you're taking a job with a bunch of people who did pass for the first time. You're all in the same cohort. You all have had, arguably the same training and the same, instruction and things like that. Even if they're not judging you, you may start judging yourself, And like I said, this is going to be a stressful test. You don't want to take any extra baggage into it. You want to get out of your head as much as possible. But I don't think that there is anything wrong with postponing taking it until you feel confident and you don't have that baggage, especially if you're really stressed about taking a test. But I will say that that's only going to be, I'm only going to condone that if in the meantime you are surrounding yourself with a really strong behavior analytic verbal community. Because if you get out of here and you're like, I'm going to take a year to study, I don't have any contingencies in my environment to study, I'm working with people who are largely non-behavioral, and my language is getting sloppy, my skills are getting sloppy, I'm not getting corrective feedback, I'm practicing errors, you're setting yourself up for failure.
Yeah, okay.
And setting yourself up more so than anything for adding stories, like we talked about. That's when you're going to be like, well, this is how it is in the real world, right? That type of stuff. And you don't want to do this. You approach this objectively. And I think maybe that goes to what you were saying about, should I approach it as a practitioner or as a scientist?
Well, so they had a random story that's making me think with everything you said. Their example question was, if you have a client that engages in SID, do you want to take baseline on that SID? Mm-hmm. And she would say that as a scientist point of view, you would say absolutely. However, from a practitioner's point of view, absolutely not, due to the risk of
I don't know that you would ever have a question that simple and black and white, and I also don't think that that's black and white because as a scientist, we still have ethical obligations, and you can use a design that doesn't require a baseline that would still show an experimental change in your behavior. And we're also talking about, what does SID mean? Right? So are we talking about some type of self-injurious behavior that doesn't cause actual harm or something like that?
Like my cousin that picks his nails.
Or is that a very low frequency?
Right.
And that's why I don't think you would ever see a question lacking, with
More
that
detail.
minimal little information.
I mean, yeah. I mean, I was thinking, how can you go from, that makes sense.
Yeah. So that's me. And I feel like a question like that would be posed for the ethics, the ethics aspect of it. And, I would say no. I'm not taking baseline on something that's high frequency, likely to cause injury, et cetera, because we can figure out ways to identify functional relations between the treatment and the outcome without a baseline.
Yeah.
We have designs that do that.
Right. Okay.
So I think to jump the gun and to say, oh, is this a scientist question or a question? I think these are behavior analytic questions, I answer them as a behavior analyst, which is we all use the same ethical guidelines. So. Okay. Yeah. Does that kind of clarify that?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Any questions? No.
Very helpful.
Good. I'm happy. Yeah. So try to approach this in a systematic, collected way. You don't want to be frazzled and feeling unprepared on top of having this pressure of, I'm about to sit here 4 hours and this maybe will make or break, my career options at least for the next couple months, Yeah. So try not to put additional pressure.